Hello there, and a very warm welcome to Chazingdra Chats, the show where we take a stroll through the life stories of people in the Pokémon community, discovering the 6 Pokémon on their dream team along the way. I'm Charlie Merriman, Merri by name, Merri by nature, otherwise known as Chazingdra, a host and commentator for the Pokémon Video Game Championship Series, and a content creator. And this week, as every week, I very much hope my guest and I can make your day merry, because I have the pleasure of being joined by Phillip Wingett, otherwise known as THATSAplusONE. Phillip, how you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you for having me.
I cannot wait to have you on the show. As I said to you just before we started recording, I've been a long time admirer of your videos and the insane strategies that you're able to come up with in competitive Pokemon video game, but you, of course, will be best placed to give a fuller introduction to yourself, so why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, so my name is Phillip Wingett, otherwise known as THATSAplusONE. I'm a professional Pokemon content creator and competitor. I've been playing VGC since about 2011, and mostly like competitive singles tournaments since about 6 years before that. I'm the type of guy that uses the wacky, off-meta, crazy Pokemon and strategies that a lot of people don't really take the time to explore, and I make daily content on YouTube and Twitch where we try and use that stuff to its fullest potential and make every single Pokemon, shine just a little bit brighter, because every Pokemon is somebody's favorite, and I take it upon myself to try and make viable sets for everyone to use.
You really represent, better than most people, the advice that Karen of the Johto Elite Four in the Generation 2 Pokemon games gives. Truly skilled trainers try and win with their favourites, and that's wonderful to see. And apologies, I assumed it was Wingett rather than Wingett. I apologise for the
it's every single person's made that mistake, it's fine.
Yeah, well, I apologise that I'm not the one that didn't. But there we go. Very much looking forward to talking to you, Phillip. Yeah, we've actually never crossed paths in person, Phillip and I. But of course, again, we've been aware of each other over the internet, and so I'm very much looking forward to learning more about you and your life story and your 6 Dream Team Pokemon. And thank you very much as well for the comments that you've made on the show over the years as well. I'm very pleased that you've been enjoying it.
I love it. It's one of my favorite pastimes when I'm at the gym. Like, I love throwing this on, and it's long. It gets me through my workouts. So thank you for actually making all of it.
Well, that's very much appreciated. I'm very pleased. Some workout fuel, sure. Yeah, well, let's bring that hype and bring that energy, and let's kick things off. So, what we're going to start off with here, very appropriately, Phillip, is getting into Pokemon.
Yeah, so, I'm a little bit older, I think, than, a lot of the competitive VGC players right now. I'm an 80s kid, so, like, I was just a little bit older going into, like, what Pokemon was, and I remember when, like, the Pokemon like came out. Like I never really had like consoles growing up. I know all my neighbors had NESs and Genesises, and I would watch them play like Sonic and Mario and Battletoads and all those other like crazy platformer games. And I never really vibed with those type of games. I remember that I was much more into like board games like chess and stuff like that. And so when Pokemon came out, I remember watching the anime. My mom actually picked me up like a strategy guide for the Pokemon games because she just thought it was, linked to the show. She thought it was like a book about the show. And then I remember getting really involved with the show. I remember seeing my friends play, and they actually got me a copy of Pokemon Red like really soon after it came out. And with the way like my brain works, like I really just was absorbed with all of like the move data and all of the damage that could potentially be done, and like optimizing your flow charts for leading to like win the game as soon as possible. I know a lot of people really involved with like catching them all and like going after the whole point of the show and building your perfect teams, but like I really just wanted to battle. I only wanted to battle. I've always been like that. And exploring like the all the crazy strategies that you can actually do in like Gen 1, even at like an early age in like grade school and stuff like that, was so interesting to me. And that's basically where like competitive Pokemon started for me. Right from the get-go, I was like, how are we min-maxing Charizard in Gen 1? I've just always been that guy.
Wow. Really fascinating. Often, of course, when I speak to people on the show, it's more the case that they play the games for what they are and enjoy them, then maybe after beating them or as the years go on, they really lean more into the battling. But for you, right from a very young age, roughly how young would you have been when you first played Pokemon?
I think I was in like 5th or 6th grade. I was like right there where I was like the big kid on the playground, right? Like bringing the link cable to school every single day, like having little tournaments over the course of like, lunch period every single day to see who was like the best person in school. Like I was, that's just definitely how I've always rolled. Okay, well, you were in it from the get-go. And sorry, just for someone based in the UK, roughly how old is 5th, 6th grade? I think that's like 11 or 12.
11 or 12. Okay, sure. Okay, so maybe a later start than others, and maybe that goes some way to explaining why you were more into the battle side of things from the get-go. And you said that what you implied was that it was your friends who got you Pokemon Red, or was it your parents?
Oh, my parents got me Pokemon like Red, but I saw it on I saw the anime and stuff like that, just like everyone else growing up. But I was like a really early adopter. My mom got me the strategy guide for like Red version. Like probably a couple weeks before it came out. It was just randomly at like a grocery store or something.
Wow. Okay. Sure. Okay, and then it's stuck with you ever since. I guess, like, as soon as you play Pokemon, did it then pave the way for other battling or strategy kind of games, or was Pokemon the one?
Yeah, so it's gonna sound so weird, but I've like only ever been like a Pokemon guy. I mean, there's a couple of games where I'll dabble into like Final Fantasy Tactics Advance and maybe like Fire Emblem, but I've just like Pokemon like came out in Gen 1 and I'm just like, how can I battle this game for the next 20 plus years of my life moving forward? That's just been my everything basically, is just trying to find like little ways to like optimize different like turn-based basically monster RPGs.
That's really interesting. I have, as with all of my guests, every single topic could be an episode in itself. And I have at least a couple more questions that I'd love to ask on that. But I think it'll make more sense to ask them over the course of the episode. So I'll put a pin in those, yeah. I guess my final question on this point is, alongside Pokemon, were you into other, extracurricular activities? Were you a sporty person, a dramatic person, a musical person in any way?
Yeah, I got the guitars back here. I grew up doing music since like a really early age. I was a drummer all throughout high school. I then went into like different like jazz and like orchestra stuff in like college. So like I've always been like really big into music. Like I said, before Pokemon, I was like really into chess and stuff like that as well. So yeah, there's just been like basically turn-based stuff has just been like my jam for the longest time.
Yeah, okay. That's fantastic. What sort of music really got you into music, so to speak?
My dad used to listen to a lot of like melodic guitar stuff and like jazz stuff and everything like that. So I would say that's what got me into music. But, like I said, I was raised in like band. I did all like drumline and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, as far as like music goes, I like a little bit of everything, I would say. I feel like the stuff that I make and that I like to do is definitely more like rock centric, but a lot more melodic and like a lot of just like noise happening at the same time is definitely my vibe. Yeah,
I think it takes, exposure to all kinds of genres to ultimately discover what your preferred is going to be. I'm a massive jazz fan myself.
Yeah.
Well, that's fascinating. Now it's time to learn what's going to be the first Pokemon on your dream team, Phillip. And as a reminder, everybody, the aim here is not for Phillip to build the most competitively viable team in any way, though he can do that if he so chooses. It's just the Pokemon that have been the most special to Phillip over the years, and he can define that for himself in whichever way he wants. I have no idea what they are. Phillip's decided on these in advance. So tell us, Phillip, what's going to be Pokemon number 1?
All right, so I'm not going to start with my favorite Pokemon, but I'm going to start with a Pokemon that I really do like. A Pokemon that I'm going to start with is actually be the one that I used to get my most recent Worlds invite, and that's going to be Terrakion. I got plushes for everything. Terrakion is going to be my first Pokemon. It's strong. It's fast. I have a really big history with like the Gen 4 competitive games, and like holy moly, like Terrakion is just it's my everything basically. Like it's the perfect Pokemon for dealing damage, mitigating damage. It's like one of the few rock types, in my opinion, that always really comes off as being strong. When you think of rock types, you're like, oh, I could water gun that. Like a surf, like that thing's gone. No, Terrakion's like, you and what army are gonna surf me, right? I'm still gonna hit hard. So coming from like a really big history of like the Gen 4 games, this would have been like the perfect Pokemon to like break Skarms and Blisses and all the other dragons and stuff like that. So I really do like Terrakion, and the fact that it's that justified ability to be paired with like Whimsicott and stuff like that can create so much different turn 1 pressure in VGC scenarios as well. So I remember when I first really got into VGC, like Terrakion was one of those mons that I was like, whoa, like this has the potential to like break the game in so many different ways. And it was one of the few things that like really got me interested in VGC, because there was just so much of a different way, like enabling like teammate play instead of like a singles play. And Terrakion was one of the Pokemon that really, enlightened me to that play style and made the game fun.
Yeah, as someone who's experimented with Terrakion and Whimsicott before as well, it's when it works, it's great. I mean, to expand on something you said there, the justified ability means that the Pokemon gets an attack boost whenever it's hit by a Dark type move, and Whimsicott can't utilize those Dark type moves very strongly, and beat up hits multiple times, so get multiple boosts to your attack, and then Terrakion hopefully just sweeps through. And I'm assuming you mean, rather than Generation 4, I'm assuming you mean Generation 5 there, because that's when Terrakion
Oh, no,
was
yeah, so
yeah.
Terrakion's from Gen 5, but Gen 4 is like a really, really important game for me competitively. That's Diamond and Pearl, and that's where I've done like a lot of like my different tournament stuff like that. So like if Terrakion was a Pokemon in Gen 4, it would have solved all of the problems every Gen 4 player could have ever asked for. That's what I meant.
Okay.
Yeah. So like coming from a Gen 4 background, this would have been like the Swiss Army knife that unlocks everything. So of course, like when they came out with it, I was just like blown away by the amount of utility this thing had.
Yeah, absolutely. Terrakion, one of the legendary Pokemon introduced in Generation 5, and a very powerful one at that. One of the few rock and fighting dual-type Pokemon that we have access to as well. Fascinating. So as the years went on and you played through Pokemon, was it really just sort of getting through the game as quickly as you could in order to unlock the competitive stuff?
Yeah, actually, funny enough, I'm terrible at this. I still do this to this day. Whenever a new Pokemon game comes out, I get like just far enough to do battles and kind of just only do battles. I remember in like 2015, I basically didn't even like beat the game. I got just far enough to unlock what I wanted at the end of the game, and then only really did battles for like all of it. And there was times when people would come on the stream and watch me play, and they're like, "You haven't beat the Elite Four yet? Like, how are you doing all this on on like a daily basis?" I was like, if you don't need to do it, you don't need to do it. But eventually, I usually get around to beating everything. Even with like Legends ZA, I still haven't completed like all the stuff that you're still trying to do, and I've been hosting tournaments for that, and it's been great.
Okay. Wow, it's really fascinating to get that perspective on things. But Terrakion is going to be the first Pokemon, so welcome to Phillip's Dream Team. And everybody, if you're enjoying this chat with That's a Plus One, please do like and subscribe. It would mean a huge amount. But we've got so much more conversation to have. So now, growing up in and out of foster care.
Yeah. So as far as like growing up in and out of foster care, I just want to say like my parents had a lot of issues, and when I was nearing the end of middle school, I was taken away by Child Protective Services to go into foster care. And when that happens, it's not a very pleasant experience. You don't really know that it's going to be happening. The rug gets kind of pulled out from under you. And you basically, CPS just shows up at your house. They say, "You're coming with us," and you can kind of take the clothes on your back and maybe like one other thing. And I was able to basically, stick my Game Boy in my pocket and get taken away. And so I think what's really important for me about all that is that the only thing that I really had to like focus on and pull me out of that really bad situation was like Pokemon. I had a Ruby version with me at the time, and I just like threw myself into like optimizing, learning everything, all the base stats, all the flow charts. How can I optimize all these little, competitive tips and tricks and make literally every other Pokemon in the game work? Because, I had a couple years basically on my own to like figure out every possible strategy that I could work. Every single time I'd restart a game, I'd use a brand new party to learn a different way to play a different Pokemon. And that was kind of like my way to pull myself out of like the other, bad things that were going on in my life at the moment.
I'm really sorry to hear that, Phillip. I'm sorry that it was such a challenging time. And yeah, I mean, so many of us can only imagine just how difficult it must have been. I'm very pleased, though, that you did have Pokemon there as a refuge and a bit of an escape for you there. At this point, Pokemon was very much the focus of what you're doing. I mean, you continuing with music, etc. as well?
Yeah, so I'm still like, doing, my extracurriculars and like school and band and stuff like that. But, it was one of those things where when I was like at school, I was thinking of like new Pokemon teams and like new different ways to use them when I got home. On my lunch period, I was doing battles against other kids at school on the link cables. And, when I got home at night, I was like building new teams to come up with new strategies to like beat the other kids at the lunch hour and stuff like that. So it was like the thing that basically kept the darkness from like creeping in. I think that's a pretty good way to look at it. But I found the things I was good at. I think that's the one thing. Like I was able to find something I was really confident in and develop like my own skills. Like I think a lot of people, when they think of like those formative years in like junior high and high school, they really think about like bonding with others and like using that to develop who you are as a person. And I really think like I really developed a lot of who I am and my own confidence within myself, trying to make like really bad mons work over a few year time span.
So then after school, do you then go to college, or what do you do?
Yeah, so after school, I did end up going to college. I played a lot of like tennis for my local like junior college team, and during college, I had a couple of roommates who also played Pokemon, and like every single day, like I kid you not, we would just like get lunch, go to like a Taco Bell or something, and we would just like play battles on like the Gen 4 games. We take a little like King of the Hill system, and you know, the top two people that would have won the games played a game, and then the loser of that game would get subbed out for the third person there. And we were playing like hours and hours of competitive singles battles, and it was so much fun. We went all the way up and down like the west coast of the United States, going up to like Washington and Seattle and SoCal and into like Arizona. And we played at like a bunch of different like tournaments and anime conventions. And it was so much fun. College was great, but it was a lot of mons for me too. Like I just played a lot of Pokemon.
Sure. Okay. What's great is that you had people around you who were also interested in playing Pokemon. So did you feel like you had that throughout growing up? You were lucky enough to have people around you who also play Pokemon?
Oh yeah, so when I grew up, like my neighbors that I grew up with, I grew up on like a long street with a ton of kids my age. I was so blessed to have that like same age group to grow up with, and we all liked the same things: card games, you know, Pokemon, video games, and stuff like that. So at every single like step of my journey, there's been like rivals that I've had, like people that really want to like be the best at like the craft that we're all working on. And yeah, every single time, like grade school, middle school, like I said, even growing up, all the different kids, like we were always trying to see who was the best like Pokemon trainer at school. And then going to college, it was the same thing. I went on road trips all the way around playing singles tournaments, and you know, that turned into like all of us starting into going to play VGC events as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay. And it's great that you had the tennis there as well as another outlet.
Yeah. Still play a bit.
Oh, yeah? Oh
yeah.
Good.
Yep.
Nice. Final question on this one. I don't know if this will segue into your next Pokemon pick or not.
Yeah.
But from this era of really grinding and also being very social with doing these Pokemon battles, is there one Pokemon that really sticks out to you?
Oh, from like this era?
Yeah.
Probably like Heracross. I think Heracross is one that I utilized a lot because this era was a lot of like Gen 4 battles. And I remember there's a lot of people that are like, oh, Salamence is the best, or Garchomp is the best, or there's so many different mons that were viable in like Gen 4 battles for singles. And I remember I was always like, Heracross is like really cool. I really, really like Heracross. It got like a huge buff in Gen 4 and gets like Mega Horn, close combat, like really good sweeper. I really just like Heracross. It's very similar, like to Terrakion, right? You know, it's like you know, Terrakion and Heracross are kind of similar. It's just Terrakion's just like way better base stats and better coverage. But yeah, Heracross is a mon that definitely like fits my playstyle. I used it at a lot of the different tournaments, and it just can be played so many different ways. It's a very, very cool mon.
Absolutely fantastic. Now it's time to learn what's going to be Pokemon number 2 on your dream team. So who's going to be joining Terrakion? So
Terrakion is going to be joined by another Pokemon from Gen 5. I got the little plush right here, and it's gonna be Zoroark. It's gonna be Zoroark here. One of my absolute favorites. I like both of the Zoroarks. I got both the forms right here, but I like the Unova Zoroark just a little bit better. I think it gets better like tech moves. It gets things like Encore. It gets things like Copycat. And I feel if you're going to really make the magic happen, like this is one of the few mons that can really do it. I would say that as far as like competitive tournaments and stuff like that go, Zoroark is one of those mons that like a lot of people do know me for. I've gotten a lot of my championship points on the VGC circuit using, you know, multiple Zoroark teams over the years. Whenever I like to go to a regional, I really like to, you know, I would say like hype myself up for it and get really excited for it, make kind of a campaign where every single day on like different social medias, I'll make a different post saying like, I'm using this today, or this is, I remember one time for Orlando regionals, I made like every single day I made a haiku for Zoroark, like trying to make Zoroark work in different ways. And, you know, I really love like that whole aspect of it, and like, you know, taking the plush with you and making it a whole like event that you can kind of document and turn into a video and stuff like that later. Zoroark, I think, is just a really, really cool mon. I've had so many different like crazy situations happen where I trick my opponents and, you know, get them to think that Zoroark is disguised as a Pokemon or not disguised as a Pokemon. And then, you know, they use the wrong move in the wrong situation. And Zoroark is just, the shenanigans that come along with this Pokemon are hilarious, and it's definitely going to be on my list.
Zoroark, of course, for anyone unfamiliar with the illusion ability, means that
Yeah.
it will come out disguised as another Pokemon on your team, and so they don't quite know how to approach. Zoroark joining the team as well, Generation 5. Would you say, obviously we have a couple of Generation 5 Pokemon on your team here now, would you say that the Pokemon introduced in Generation 5 overall would be your favourite?
That's the thing. I think Generation 5 was a very, very like important generation for Pokemon's growth. I would say that's where a lot of like the power creep happened with things like Volcarona and Quiver Dance and Shell Smash. I think the game really changed around Gen 5. But I don't know if it's a lot of my favorite mons. I do like a lot of them. That's a great question. I've never actually had to think about that way. I guess I do like a lot of Gen 5 mons because they really build on the aspects of competitive play from Gen 4 that I liked a lot. You know, different team preview mechanics, different like really aggressive play styles really emerged as a different way to play the game instead of, you know, damage mitigation and bulk that were prevalent in like Gen 4 and Gen 3. So yeah, I like Gen 5, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Really interesting. What's the... You mentioned briefly there when you were talking about traveling around with your friends, going to official tournaments. Do you remember what the first official tournament that you attended was?
Yeah, so the first like official Pokemon tournament that I ever played. So that would probably be... So I played in a lot of online tours. You know, we have like these international challenges and stuff like that you can play online. I played in a lot of those. I was definitely like a ladder hero. I was someone that just like played a lot against my friends. And this was back before like a lot of the, you know, social medias and, you know, things like that. You had to like know people and like dial in their phone number and call them up to set up games to play and like places to meet with like link cables. So, yeah, I remember my first real official event, though. That would probably be, like, in person, would be Lancaster Regionals 2013. Wow. So it was a post-Worlds event for 2013, so it was technically, I think, going into the 2014 season, but it was that weird situation where we used the last season's rules. So it was right after Aaron Zhang got top 4 at Worlds with the whole Will-O-Wisp Rotom thing. And so, like, Pokemon in the US was like really big because an American player had done really good for like the first time since I believe Ray Rizzo had done it a couple years before. So like American VGC was like really, really growing, and it was the event actually happened, I believe, the day that X and Y came out, and it was in Northern California. But it was still using the Gen 5 games.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, for anyone unfamiliar, Aaron Zhang, a very popular competitor and content creator for competitive Pokemon video game, VGC, but had a very unfortunate way to leave that 2013 World Championships with some things not going Aaron's way during that tournament. But okay, well, amazing history in the game, Phillip, so thank you for that. And now we'll go from there into singles tournaments and travel to grassroots events. Yeah,
so that's like, we talked like just a little bit about it, but me and my college roommates were just so into Pokemon. Like, we'd wake up, do like a couple hours of play, go to like our classes or go to lunch or something, come back, do like a couple hours of play, go play like tennis or other things that, like, you know, you do in college. You just kind of goof around and you have a lot of free time. And then like in the evening, we would just play like a lot of like Pokemon, you know, until it was time to go to bed, right? And in doing so, we would test every possible like little, you know, Pokemon interaction we could. We wanted to learn like everything. You know, I've always thought that, you know, that you hear the term like Pokemon Master thrown around a lot, right? And some people like to think like, I'm a Pokemon Master, I play VGC, or I'm a Pokemon Master, I catch them all and stuff like that. I really think a Pokemon Master is someone who can be good at like every aspect of battles. That's going to be singles, doubles, different like tiers or rule sets, using like, you know, only evolution unevolved Pokemon, knowing like everything. That's what I've always thought. So like we would force ourselves to like really experiment outside of our comfort zone. And what that really like drove in for me was learning how to play the game with like one or two hands tied behind your back, I think, because the way our dynamic worked is we had one player who, his name was Dustin, who was really, really standard. He only really used the metamons. And then we had a guy named Patrick who he had like preferences that he liked, but at any time he could just play standard because he was a really, really good player. And then we had me, where I was just like a loose cannon. I'm going to hit you with the weirdest Pokemon interaction you've ever seen right off the get-go every single time. I'm trying to steal the game. I'm trying to make plays. And I think the three of us, because we played so much, we had a really good dynamic of like learning what's good, but being prepared for anything. And so when we would go to tournaments, it was always like we'd show up to this tournament and there'd be probably like anywhere between like 60, 80, sometimes a little bit over 100 people at like grassroots tournaments. This is back in like anywhere between 2008 to probably 2012. And so you'd kind of know just from like different forum interactions online, like who the, 3 or 4 really good players are at these events and who are just like kind of there because it's being held at like an anime convention or other, gaming event. So you'd really know like, okay, we're probably going to get top 8, but like, how are we going to decide which one of us like moves on if we have to play each other, or like, what team am I going to bring to not only beat my friends, but then like win the tournament on top of that? And I really think like that level of like tournament prep really did prepare me for like my career playing a lot of VGC, because by the time VGC got big, I was already a player who was used to like top 8ing most of the events that they went to, used to doing well and having that like tournament experience to actually pull out those wins in really clutch situations. There's one like story that I wanted to tell about like a tournament that I went to. I think this was around like 2011, and I went with a buddy of mine named Alex. Dustin and Patrick couldn't go with us, and Alex was like new to competitive Pokemon, and he had a lot of work to do, like leveling up his plays and leveling up his skill to get like to a point where he could actually compete in this tournament. And what was really special about this tournament was like the winner of this tournament got a 3DS, and these were actually like brand new at the time. And so, like, that's one of the reasons why we actually chose this tournament to go to. It wasn't too far of a drive. We just road tripped over there. And leading up to the tournament, we did a lot of practice battles. We practiced, like, every situation possible for, like, a few weeks before the tournament started. And when we got to the tournament, we're playing all the rounds. We're doing everything. I think there's, like, 150 people in a grassroots tournament. It was, like, ridiculous. So the 3DS was, like, a really big draw for all these people to play in this tournament. And I actually have to play Alex in the semifinals, right? And so I play him in the semifinals, and we've played so many different games, and it comes down to the last Pokemon on each side. They have a Fortress, and I have a Heracross. I talked about Heracross being really important. And he hits me with a Gyro Ball, leaves me at 1 HP because I have an item called a Focus Sash, because I've been using close combats all game. My defense is in the dumpster here. And he leaves me at 1 HP, and I hit him with a counter, which a tech that like I've been saving specifically for this tournament that I didn't really talk that much about Alex with, and ended up getting the KO on his Fortress. Last Pokemon, 1 HP standing, and I could just tell he was so crushed because he couldn't get this 3DS like any other way. We were broke college students. And what he didn't know is that like the whole time that I'm going to this tournament, my plan is to like win the tournament and like give him the 3DS. Like that's the whole reason why I'm playing. That's the whole reason why like, I wanted him to come with me and go on this journey, is because like he's gonna get a 3DS probably. And I go into the finals, and it's a really good opponent that I've played at multiple tournaments before, and I end up winning. I end up winning with like a Serene Grace, like flamethrower, like Blissey burning stuff like that. It was such a cool tournament, and I remember like giving him the 3DS and thinking to myself like, this is probably like one of the coolest things I've ever done. I'm gonna remember this forever. This is gonna be like the best tournament thing. And he was super happy. I was super happy. It was like the memories we made like along the way that made it like so much more impactful. And yeah, I just had a great time at that tournament. That was a really good win for me.
Oh my goodness. I want to see the movie of that saga. That's incredible. The build up, the you knowing you're going to give him the 3DS if you win anyway. Wow. And the fact that you were bringing Blissey to a tournament of Forage.
I love Blissey.
So cool. Yeah. So wonderful. Oh my goodness gracious me. Well, thank you very much indeed for sharing that with us, Phillip. Very heartwarming tales. My final question on this point, you mentioned a couple of times now that some of these tournaments we played at anime conventions. Mm-hmm. Would you say that alongside Pokemon you were starting to get into anime as well?
I wouldn't really say that I was. That's the thing, is like a lot of my roommates really did like anime and that whole like culture. I read a decent amount of manga when I was in like high school and college, but I wouldn't really say that I was big into anime conventions. Like what I would do is when these anime conventions got published, I would get in contact with whoever was in charge of the gaming room, ask if they're going to do tournaments. Sometimes they needed help setting up tournaments. I would help set up the tournaments. And basically just like grow the grassroots Pokemon scene. And so like I was like, cool, anime convention, that means I get to play in another Pokemon tournament. And that was kind of how I always saw it for me.
Well, fair enough. Eyes on the prize. Now it's time to introduce what's going to be Pokemon number 3 on your dream team alongside Terrakion and Zoroark.
So it's finally time for my favorite Pokemon. Like the Pokemon that like put me on the map, the thing that like a lot of people know me for here. and that is going to be Butterfree. It's going to be Butterfree. Is my all-time favorite Pokemon. I've top cut regionals with this thing. I've won mid-season and premier level events with this thing. I've taken it to so many events, and even before this thing got like a G-Max evolution, like Butterfree's always been like a classic Pokemon for me. We were talking about going back to like Gen 1. In Generation 1, like sleep mechanics were incredibly broken. Like they would have to wait a turn to wake up and stuff like that. And so doing battles like all throughout growing up, like Butterfree was always one of my goats. It was a great flying pivot to block ground damage. You have the sleep powders, like Butterfree is just perfect. And I think a lot of people, when they think of like Butterfree and the anime and stuff like that, they think of like the Bye Bye Butterfree episode. And for me, I was just always like, oh no, this thing just has the stats. It has the stats, it has the moves, it has the coverage, good defensive pivot, like chef's kiss, like Butterfree, just sign me up. This Pokemon's so good. And it got even better when it got a G-Max evolution. So it's a really cool mon, very, very important to me.
Yeah. So, just to unpack a couple of things there, sleep in Pokemon, it renders your Pokemon incapable for a few turns, but in Generation 1, even more so, the turn that you wake up, you still can't attack, and then you'd have to wait until your next turn to attack. So yeah, it can really go a long way. And Gigantamax, some Pokemon have, in the Generation 8 games, every Pokemon can grow big via Dynamax. Some Pokemon on top of that have a Gigantamax form, so they have a slightly different boosted version of that big form, so to speak, and Butterfree was one of them. So, do you recall that on your very first playthrough of Pokemon Red, you had a Butterfree?
Oh yeah, it's one of those mons that I get like every profile. Just like it's I get it every profile. It's in any game. Like it's just the cruise control for cool. Like we were talking about trying to beat the games like as fast as possible so I can do battles. It's one of those mons that just like lets me do that, and it's just one of my favorites. It's great. There needs to be more butterfly Pokemon. I know there are butterfly Pokemon in pretty much every game, but there still needs to be more. I like butterflies a lot.
Sure. Okay. Well, yeah. I guess the last sort of new generation that we had access to Butterfree would have been Generation 8, but we would have had it in the Diamond Pearl remakes, Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl. Do you remember, what's your last major win with Butterfree, if you remember?
So my last major one with Butterfree, I used it in Sword and Shield, and I took it to Dallas Regionals, where I lost my win and in for day 2. With Butterfree, I was using Choice Scarf Butterfree. That was a lot of fun. But I won Premier Challenges with it in Sword and Shield. My last regional top cut with Butterfree would have been in 2017? That's San Jose Regionals. Wow. That's probably my last top cut at a big major event with it. Other than that, it's just Premier Challenges, mid-season showdowns, stuff like that. I've won a bunch of those with Butterfree before.
Very cool. And going all the way back to your love of Generation 1 as well. So, Butterfree, welcome to the team. Now, we will sleep powder from there into starting on Twitch and YouTube.
Yeah. So, I've been doing Twitch and YouTube for a long time. I'm full-time making Pokemon content creation, and I've had a YouTube channel since about 2009, and the first channel I had got banned because I used to copyrighted music, because I feel like a lot of people make those first mistakes when they want to upload content. They don't know that they can't use certain stuff, and so that channel got axed. It was just doing Gen 4 competitive battles. But into Gen 5, I got my act together. I started making really good content on YouTube, I thought. And when I started on YouTube, it wasn't even because I saw other people making content. This is still pretty early. I think a lot of people, when they say who inspired you to do YouTube? I don't really know if I have that many inspirations. It was more so I thought the stuff that I was doing was really cool. Using Zoroark and Terrakion and all these other things. One of my favorite ways to play Terrakion was Focus Sash, Psych Up Terrakion, where I bait people into setting up moves, and I can copy them with Psych Up to gain all those boosts back and then reverse sweep them. That was one of my favorite ways to play. And I just wanted to have this stuff recorded for when I was really older, to relive what I would call my glory days. And so doing YouTube and stuff like that, I didn't really have a ton of inspirations. I kind of just uploaded battles where I thought I did something cool. And after doing that for a few years, and we talked a little bit about how much Pokemon I've really been playing over the years, it kind of just became this thing that I did it every day, and I realized through doing it every day, I had just developed a level of play and a network of people that wanted to play so much competitive Pokemon, where I wanted to start like streaming it live and like talking through how to play through the different strategies live and start to try and help people get kind of to where I was. I've had this kind of thought for a while that like if you're trying to help people, you don't need to be like the best player in the world to help people. You just got to be good enough to get them to kind of understand what you're doing. You have to deliver the info in a way that they can actually digest it to bring them up to your level as soon as possible, really, with the least amount of resistance. So in doing everything like live on Twitch, that was one of those situations where, you know, people were really, really liking like how to, you know, understand the usage stats and how to build the right teams with the right stats and moves and coverages and the right leads to actually like succeed at like a competitive level. And this is going into like VGC. So I'm going like from a single situation into like a VGC situation, helping people kind of learn how to do both. And on Twitch, I had been streaming since like 2012, I think. 2012, I had done a lot of streaming on Twitch, and I wanted to go like full time. And, you know, I had been doing college for a few years. I didn't really know where my life was going to go next. I just got done, you know, going to all these different singles tournaments. I started playing in VGC regionals kind of around that time. And I was like, I want to really give like Twitch and YouTube and like Pokemon content creation a go. I just got kind of finished with college, and I don't really know where my life's going to go next. And so I thought to myself, like, I want to become a Twitch partner, which way back then was like really, really hard to do. It wasn't really something that just happened to people. There were probably only 100 or 200 people on the Twitch platform that were partnered at that time. And there wasn't really that many ways to get partnered. There wasn't the affiliate program that we have now. It was just really, really hard. There was only, you had to either be like someone who was an amazing professional in a game, you had to be someone who could get massive views on stuff, or what you could do is be on like an organization that was like affiliated with Twitch in some way. And so what I did was I took like a year of making like really what I thought was like good educational content on YouTube, and I streamed as regular as I could, and I tried to get my eyes in front of as many different like organizations as possible to try to, you know, join an organization that would then have like Twitch partner slots. That's like what my thought was. And I I thought all this stuff, if I got Twitch partner and, I made it on YouTube, I'd be able to make this like my career, and my family would like it, and it would be perfect, like happily ever after, right? So after about a year of trying, I finally found a couple orgs that were willing to, reach out to me and make like, collab content with me, to where like if I did XYZ things, and the org eventually got like a couple Twitch partner spots through a couple ways we'll talk about in just a sec. If that were to happen, I would get one of those spots and I would then become a Twitch partner. And so after seeing like all the different orgs that wanted to work with me through doing that, I ended up choosing an org called Enemy Esports, which like I haven't really talked that much about this, but I've been pretty like big into, competitive esports for most of my life. Things like StarCraft. This was Enemy Esports was a League of Legends team. I'm pretty big into esports and the whole VGC and stuff like that as well. But Enemy Esports was an up-and-coming League of Legends team right around like the second and third season of the North American LCS like championship series. And they were trying to qualify for like the major big series for that game, which was League of Legends. And if you qualified through that, your team got like, everyone on your team and your org got like LCS spots. I think you got like 10 or 12 spots for your team. And Enemy Esports played through this whole tournament. They won the tournament to qualify for the LCS. And because like in my contract that I signed, I was able to then get a Twitch partner spot. That allowed me to get Twitch partner, kind of circumventing a lot of the other requirements and viewership requirements that you needed back then. So in that situation, like I really thought that like I did my homework, I put in the hard work, I found a loophole, I exploited it. I was able to then get Twitch partner pretty early, I would say. This is like 2014 is when all this stuff is kind of coming together. And, I got everything I could ever wanted. Like I got Twitch partner, I got like my YouTube channel going, and I started doing a lot more VGC stuff because that's what, you would do. If you're a professional player at something, you're taking things very seriously, you start going to a lot more events, and that kind of just led into me transitioning a lot of my content away from singles into mostly VGC content for probably the next, like where we are now, like a decade from now. So that's kind of the whole story behind that.
Wow, okay, yeah. For anyone unfamiliar, VGC is played with 2 Pokemon on the field versus your opponent's 2, whereas singles is, of course, just 1 versus 1, and so the strategies vary pretty wildly. Okay, so first of all, I guess we should remark on the fact that at the time of recording, we are but 24 hours out from you reaching 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. So massive congratulations again on that.
Thank you so much.
Looking back, having just talked about the origins of that, how does that feel now?
It's really, I still can't believe it, really. I'm not someone that's, trying to get to 100,000 or any sort of like crazy number. It feels so nice to have 50K since I've been doing this for most of my life now at this point. But yeah, it's just one of those things where every single day since 2015, I've made a video. I actually think I have the most amount of just VGC content that's like out of anyone on YouTube, because it's been daily long form content since about 2015. And it's just so, it just warms my heart so much to see people like appreciate the content, like it, interact with it, learn from it. It's the best feeling. My favorite thing to do every single day is like wake up, answer my comments, help people. I really just want to give back to the people that allow me to like do the thing that makes me happy, which is, play competitive Pokemon. And if I never get another subscriber, that's completely fine. I feel like I've made it. I'm super, super blessed to be in the situation where I am. And every single day is just a wonderful experience.
Oh, well, very heartwarming words and fantastic achievement. So I guess, you were talking there about when you were starting to think about Pokemon and YouTube and Twitch as potentially a career. A couple of sort of intertwined questions here, the first of which is, what were you choosing to study at college? And then also, what do you think you would be doing or would have chosen to do if you hadn't then lent into content full time?
That's a great question. I probably should have touched on that because it actually is pretty important. I started college as a music major for the first couple years, and being a percussionist, I feel like there's only a couple routes you could go. You go the music production, you could go the music teacher route, or you can go the music performance route. And I would say I'd be more inclined to do the music performance route, which is just really hard as a percussionist because, it's one of those things where like, I'm a percussionist. They're like, cool, so you play mallets, you play piano, you do all these other things, all these auxiliary instruments. And it's like, I can, but, it's really hard to create that music performance when you excel at like a specific part of being a percussionist. Like I was someone that worked in like the pits for orchestras and stuff like that, using like the timpanis, the cymbals, all the other like weird instruments that you might not really think of when you think of percussion. And so when they're like, cool, like just do this on the drum set for like all these different songs. And it's like, I can do the drum set, I'm capable, but it's not like my passion. When you think of someone who's a music major, you think they're really, really skilled in, a specific instrument. And I'm more of like a jack of all trades, master of none. And I feel that really kind of plays parallels with VGC. I get pretty decent with like a lot of really different things instead of excelling at like one specific thing. And so I did that for a couple years before I realized I was like, hey, this is not the major for me. There's just too much pressure with being like a performance specialist in that sort of situation where, they want you to play a bunch of different instruments that I didn't really want to play. So I transitioned over into horticulture for the rest of school. And horticulture is basically like studying different like plants and like growing patterns, selling things to nurseries. And you can also go kind of into like landscape design, go into like floral arrangements and stuff like that. And what really got me into horticulture, I was just taking a class because it fulfilled like a requirement to graduate, an intro to horticulture class. And I realized that like, whoa, like horticulture is basically just like the Pokedex. You just have to understand like every single plant's like growing patterns, sunset zones. It's just like training Pokemon. It's the same thing. Like, so like it just clicked in my brain. I was like, these two are the same thing. I can retain this information incredibly easily. I can optimize things, like cutting the fat, like choosing the right types of soils is the same as choosing items. Like it just same thing for me. And so if I were to not be doing, Pokemon stuff, I'm pretty sure I would just be working in a nursery, helping people get the right plants for their gardens and trying to like flow chart their perfect garden team, if you will. And Yeah, I probably will do that at some point because that's something that's still really interesting for me. But yeah, that's what I went to school for.
Wow, really fascinating. I love how you've tied those two together, and also that, you know, obviously you have your guitars behind you. Also that you have you keep up the music. Presumably, you keep up the music in a fairly casual way now.
Yeah, so I'm in a couple bands where in one of my bands I'm just the drummer and I kind of just play shows with that band, and you know, every couple years we go on a small tour or something. And then I have another band where it's kind of just a complete solo project for me where I do all the guitars, bass, drums, keyboards, vocals, everything. And every like 3 or 4 months I'll just make like a new song, usually like after a big break of like a season or a regional circuit or something like that. I'll just make like one song, get it out there, and it's just fun, just completely fun. Like mess around with all the different, you know, settings and music levels and stuff like that.
Yeah, very nice. Very pleased you're able to keep it up. Well, incredible. Now it's time to introduce what's going to be Pokemon number 4 on your dream team alongside Terrakion, Zoroark, and Butterfree.
Yeah, so Pokemon number 4 is actually going to be the Pokemon that I top cut my first regional with, and it's going to be the first Mega Evolution on our list, and that's going to be Mega Sceptile. Mega Sceptile is going to be my 4th Pokemon. I remember when this thing first got announced and everyone was like, whoa, Mega Swampert's so cool. Whoa, Mega Blaziken. Whoa, Mega Evolution. This is going to be a Pokemon from Mega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, which is the second set of Mega Evolution games after X and Y. So this is when like new Megas were first starting to be added. And I feel like no one really respected Mega Sceptile. Everyone was still really big on using like Mega Kangaskhan, and they were really excited to use Mega Salamence and Mega Metagross, which were also coming out in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. And I was just like, Mega Sceptile, that's cool. Grass Dragon, fast, strong, it's a sweeper, like that, it's everything that like fits my playstyle. Hit hard, hit fast, hit people before like problems arise, create a bunch of different like you know, chaotic energy in the game that you can capitalize on and punish people for either over-respecting or disrespecting certain lead options. So I really do like Sceptile, and it is the Pokemon that I went undefeated in Swiss with at the 2015 Lancaster Regionals, which were SoCal at that time. And I've always said this story, like there are less people, I think, that have there are less people that have gone undefeated in Swiss at a regional than there are that have like actually won regionals, because we have players like WOLFE GLICK, you know, Joe Garte, Aaron Cybertron Zhang that have like won multiple regionals, but like there's less people that have like gone undefeated in Swiss because like not every event even has one of those. Sometimes you don't even have an undefeated in Swiss player. And I went undefeated using one of my favorite Pokemon, Mega Sceptile, and I put in so much work to make that team work, and it was so perfect to like see it actually, all the flowcharts come together at like the you know, regional level, and all the lines kind of fall into place, and just it was perfect. It was so good. I had a great time with it.
Must have been so satisfying to see that come to fruition. And Mega Evolution Pokemon or Mega Evolve Pokemon, they're temporary boosted final forms that some Pokemon can access, like Sceptile, and of course very prevalent in Pokemon Legends ZA that has recently come out at the time of recording. So Mega Sceptile, welcome to the team. Now we will breaking swipe from there into your first few regional top cuts, but then dealing with the struggle to continue producing results.
Yeah, so we were just talking about Mega Sceptile, right, and how back in the day, I didn't used to go to every single regional event. I think it's pretty normal nowadays for the pro players to go to every single event. If you watch a lot of the regionals, you see the same players going everywhere. And while I've done that in my, you know, competitive history, back then I would only really go to like 2 or 3 regionals a season. Just because I like to take that like 2 or 3 months to really figure out a team, you know, everything you need to know about it to play it at its highest level. Find every single flowchart and every single lead situation, so you basically know like every possible thing that could happen, and you know, you're just kind of going through the motions. You do most of your work before the actual event, and then when the event happens, you're just going through your different flowcharts and like finding the different like, you know, lines to win the games through stuff you've already hopefully planned out beforehand. So with like Mega Sceptile, I'd been working on that team ever since the games had come out, probably about 3 months earlier, because it was the first event, one of the first events of the 2015 season. And in the 2014 season, we saw a lot of Kangaskhan with its Mega Kangaskhan with its parental bond ability, paired with Gale Wings pre-nerf, Talonflame, able to go for priority boosted flying moves and just be able to spam those. And it was really, really oppressive in 2014. That was the year that Sejun Park also won with Pachirisu. So going into 2015, we thought that we were going to see a lot more Mega Salamence. That was the new big Mega on the block. You can lead with it. It sets an Intimidate up against both opponents, and then it can Mega Evolve and then pin that Kangaskhan Talonflame. It was the counter to that over-aggressive meta that we saw in 2014. And so what really made me think Sceptile was going to be really good is Sceptile outspeeds and then can pin that Mega Salamence. So in theory, the idea would be a lot of the player base is going to be using Mega Salamence to beat Mega Kangaskhan, and I can use Mega Sceptile to beat Mega Salamence before I actually have to play any Kangaskhan's, because those are all going to be losing to the Salamence. And so I really worked on, polishing up my lines and, trying my best to make Mega Sceptile work, and I ended up using a team that was Mega Sceptile with its Lightning Rod ability, being able to gather in Electric-type moves, get a special attack boost when I use those moves, and then just go for a ton of damage right off the first turn. And in doing that, I paired it with a Choice Scarf Rotom Heat, which, again, the Choice Scarf gives you a +1 boost to your speed. So I made my Rotom faster than my Sceptile, and I used a move called Discharge. Discharge hits everything on the board, including my Sceptile, activating that Lightning Rod, hitting both my opponents and having a 30% chance to have a paralysis, which is going to potentially make them miss their move or skip their turn, and it's just a really solid move. And so using those guys, I was able to just roll through a lot of the competition, and it was just the right team for the right tournament, right? I think that's a good way to put it. It was just the right team for the right tournament. I had good matchups. I ended up going all the way to top 8 before losing to the eventual champion, Alberto Lara. And, I had Focus Blast on my Sceptile, which has a 70% chance to hit, but a 30% chance to miss. And I had hit 9 or 10 Focus Blasts in this tournament so far. And I missed one in Game 3 against Alberto Lara, which would have won me the set. And I was still fine with it. But at the same time, that was my first big regional top cut. All the work that I had done in my career so far had kind of led up to that. I've been using meme mons and anti-meta stuff and trying my best to make all these wacky strategies work against some of the best players in the world. And I had finally broken through and gotten that top cut spot. And not only the top cut spot, I won the top cut as the first place player in the whole tournament. So I felt really validated. But then after the tournament, what happened was imposter syndrome kind of started to set in. Okay, I did this, but how could I redo this? This is something that took me 5+ months to put together and get perfect, and I'm just expected to replicate that in a week at a local or on stream or in any situation. And I got hit with a lot of having to live up to now what is a top level player mentality and having to run it back in the same ways. And I found myself in the rest of that season kind of using more Sceptile teams and more other teams that utilized similar techs. But then you go to events and people know they know that trick because you already used it. It's really hard to get out of being I think a one trick player or pony in the competitive scene. And so it was just really, really hard for me to deal with that. And I had gone to other events and stuff like that over the rest of the 2015 season. And then going into the 2016 season, they changed the rules to allow us to use some of the best legendary Pokemon in the game. Things like Xerneas, things like Primal Groudon, Mega Rayquaza. That was the year that WOLFE won Worlds. And that sort of really control-y playstyle, it made my playstyle of using the lesser used Pokemon really, really hard. So if we're taking a look at the years here, I'd gone all in, getting Twitch partner and getting everything that I needed to, work on YouTube and everything. And I finally did well using my own tech that I developed using off meta strategies. And I have to deal with the oppressiveness that comes with fighting some of the best legendary Pokemon in the game. And it just doesn't really work with me. So 2016, I really struggled to get results. I only went to a couple events that season, and I just focused really hard on content creation, saying you know what? I don't need to actually top cut every single event. I don't need to win everything. I just need to make the game fun for me again, because it was really fun when I made that Sceptile team. It was really fun when I was trying to force myself to be the best version of myself that I could be, instead of trying to live up to what other people expect me to be now that I'm a top cut player. Once I realized that I just need to play the game for fun, I started getting like a lot more like top cuts. I started having a much more healthy relationship with the game. And then going into the 2017 season, the first event of the 2017 season, where this is on Sun and Moon, this is where Z moves are going to be a mechanic, where you can utilize super powered charge moves that like have a correlation with your item to do massive damage on like, you know, the first few turns of the game. For like aggressive players, Z moves are very, very good. And I ended up getting top cut at that event with Butterfree, right? We talked about that earlier. I ended up using one of my favorites. I made the game fun for me, and I found a way to make like my own strategies work. And in getting top cut at that event, I used a team that utilized 3 different Z crystals. I actually think to this day, like there's not been a single person who's like played on the official stream that has used 3 different Z moves in all 3 of the games. And that's, looking back, that's such a wacky, crazy strategy, but you're basically just playing a best of 1 3 times. You're like, hey, can you handle this 50-50? Can you handle this 50-50? Can you handle what happens in the third game when I have both 2 Pokemon that have Z crystals and you don't know which one's going to come? Like, how do you handle that information? And the reason why I was able to make those things work is because I planned out how my opponents in the games that I actually play tested with react in the different like fight or flight responses that people like to come up with. Like, how do you react to this type of pressure? If I were to, you know, bluff with this lead or lead with this, how do you react? And I've got really, really good at figuring out how people, you know, reading the body language of people in person and seeing how they react to things. And I just was able to make the game a lot more fun for me again, using the Pokemon that I liked. I felt more comfortable using the Pokemon that I liked than trying to be a version of myself that, you know, I felt deserved to be there. I realized I deserved to be there because I'm putting in the hard work, and it was just really validating to, you know, again, get back to top cutting. And through the rest of the 2017 season, I did well at a bunch of other events. I won MSSs. I got put on the official stream a few more times, and I just had I got back to like the game being fun for me at that time.
It's great that you were able to, you know, identify what was lacking when you weren't getting those results and why you weren't having fun anymore. And the fact that you were able to liberate yourself, so to speak, and then get those results back. And I think there's a lot of wisdom to be taken from that for everyone watching and listening. So thanks for that, Philip. And now it's time for Pokemon number 5 on your dream team, alongside Terrakion, Zoroark, Butterfree, and Mega Sceptile.
Yeah, so Pokemon number 5 is a Pokemon that I took to the World Championships in 2024. I was the only player, I think, in the 2024 World Championships that used one of these, but it's a really good Pokemon, and that's going to be Cresselia. Cresselia is amazing. It's one of the best Pokemon like ever created. I think like out of all the Pokemon that I've listed, I think this might be the first good one, but Cresselia is amazing. And the fact that it gets Lunar Blessing in the new games, which is a move that can restore its health, its teammates' health, and cure any sort of status conditions, I think that's one of the coolest moves in the game. You can heal, you can mitigate damage, you can solve for any sort of RNG problems you might have, like getting frozen or something like that on your teammate. I think Cresselia is so cool, and it really leans into my playstyle, where I like to use a lot of like aggressive mons, and then have like that one solid defensive mon, just in case I need to get myself out of a hole. So Cresselia has always been that mon for me. I actually used it in my very first regional in 2013. I built a team around Cresselia, Jellicent, and Garchomp and stuff like that. And it's just always been one of those mons that I've always had a blast using, and every single time it's legal for whatever rule set we're using, I always try and make Cresselia work. And it just gets, it just gets better over time. It's just such a good Pokemon.
Like a fine wine or a cheese.
That's what I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, Cheeselia, I guess.
Yo, there you go.
That's fascinating. I didn't realize you were the only player to bring Cresselia to 2024 Worlds, because as you say, it's like, sure, it wasn't that prevalent during that season, but it's also a Pokemon it's hard for it to be bad in any given metagame, and so I'm surprised that more people won't bring it. Well, that's fantastic. I know we're going to be talking about that Worlds or 2024 circuit run in just a moment, but I think at this point, every single Pokemon on your team has a different typing. We've got Rock and Fighting, Dark, Bug Flying, Grass and Dragon, and now Psychic. So we'll see if it's going to be another totally different type to round out the dream team. But Cresselia, welcome. We will now Lunar Blessing from there into, just as we mentioned there, your World's 2024 circuit run.
Yeah, so, you know, I've been now competing for most of my life at this point. You know, I started doing, you know, tournaments in like 2005, 2006. I transitioned over to VGC around 2011, 2012. And I've now been making like consistent content on YouTube and Twitch and doing all this sort of stuff for like a long time, right? And I think around like the pandemic, we got into like a situation where I personally realized like I've top cut the amount of events I want to top cut. I've gone to Worlds. I've done everything that I wanted to do. I need to make these events that I go to more about the people that want to interact with me and try my best to make the events for the other participants like that special thing that it was for me when I first started playing, right? So when I go to an event and someone wants to come and talk to me, I'm going to do everything in my power to like really like ask them how their event's going, like ask them, are they going to come to the next one? Like, are you maybe going to bring more friends? Like try my best to like build up the Pokemon scene, because I feel like that's what, you know, veterans have to do, is like help other people enjoy the game and find like maybe like try and find different ways for other people to enjoy things in case like they're in a funk like I was at some point. So going into the 2024 season, right, a couple years after that, after kind of goofing off at regionals, I would say, just kind of trying to make different mons work and, you know, meeting members of the community and having fun, basically just being kind of washed up, I decided to make a really good push for Worlds in 2024. And that's going to be like Scarlet and Violet's formats, not this last format, but the year right before that. That's the 2024 Worlds. And you know, I really wanted to try my best to qualify for Worlds, which is a really hard thing to do. You got to get a lot of championship points in the official circuit, which means you got to go to a ton of events, do well in these events, and I actually didn't know if I could do it. I honestly didn't know if I still had the chops, because I know for me, the team building process is something that usually takes so long, and going to multiple regionals in every single month, I didn't know if I would have like the, you know, ability to basically recreate the wheel with all the different meme teams and make it fun and interesting and, you know, ride the wave of all the different rule changes that go along with that. But I really wanted to try and see if I could make it work. I was in a position where I felt that I had like 1 year like really left in me to show that I could compete at the highest level. And one more hand that I tied behind my back here was I was going to try and qualify for Worlds without actually trying to win any of the events that I went to. And I know that sounds crazy, but there's a reason why I did it like that. I'm someone that doesn't really have the mental to play like all of the tournament. You play through, you know, Swiss day one, and then like I usually, I guess I'm getting ahead of myself. I do a lot of my streaming and YouTube videos. You play for like 2 or 3 hours, and that's it, right? So I don't have like the perspicacity and the mental fortitude to play like 10 hours of Pokemon like back to back, especially like every other weekend, traveling to like a different part of the country and stuff like that. So I know what my strengths are, I know what my weaknesses are, and I wanted to try and see if I could qualify for Worlds off just pretty decent results, you know, 5-3, 6-2, the whole point is to get points from the event, championship points. You don't need to make a deep day 2 run, you don't need to win, and in doing so, if I could qualify through Worlds by doing that mentality, that could show that anyone can qualify for Worlds. You just have to build a team that's good enough to get some points without really trying to win it all. Because I feel like there's a bunch of like, the Sceptile team, for example, that was a team that was optimized to win it all. Versus like a lot of the teams I use in 24, you would know that you're going to go probably positive, but if you're having to go up against like WOLFE GLICK, one of the best players of all time, or, you know, Riley Factura, they're probably going to beat you. They're optimized to beat your strategies, right? So you're taking your wins where you can get them. You're trying to do your best, but at the same time, you're being realistic that your team might not have the skill ceiling required to make those really deep runs. So in 2024, I did actually manage to get that Worlds invite. I went to, I believe, 8 regionals, and I got like 5-3 or better at all of them. So I was able to get like basically like top 64, top 100 points from all of them. I had a really deep run at NEIC where I managed to get my invite. And what really actually got me my invite that year is, instead of like locking in at regionals, I really locked in for my locals. I locked in and like got all the first places required at premier challenges and mid seasons, and built up a really strong community with the, you know, other NorCal players, which are, you know, doing great at regionals now too. And I think like what I was really proud of in that season was I did all of those events using the Pokemon that I liked. I didn't once, you know, deviate and just like use a team that did well in some other event because it works. I always tried to force the stuff that I liked into these teams to show people that are watching the videos and stuff like that you can win with your favorites, you can qualify for Worlds, you can try your best, it will work, you just have to continuously do it. And I stuck with it, and I was able to do it, and I just felt so great about that.
That's as you say, you said you felt like you had one final big push left in you, and it is wonderful that that's the way that it went. And, you're able to tick off all of the things you're aiming to achieve in that season, and you played at the World Championships. Incredible. Yeah. So that's the win in itself. But, I mean, got to ask at this point, how did those Worlds go?
Yeah, so in round 1 of Worlds, I fought against a bunch of Day 2 players. I'll briefly run it down. First player I fought was a player that actually made like a deep Day 2 run with like Rocky Helmet Hariyama. The team I ended up bringing was like Cresselia, Raging Bolt, Mindshao, very like weird Calyrex Ice Trick Room team, but it was a fun one. And then, so I lost my first round, and I actually go up against Jamie Boyd in the second round. And I was like, okay, well, this is it for me. Because, like, as far as, like, the content creators that can do, the pro players that can do a bunch of weird stuff, I would say Jamie's all the way up there with, like, the crazy strategies that they come out. One of the few people I would say is, like, above me in that category. But I managed to win in that one in our second round. And it was because of Cresselia that I won. Cresselia just had a really good matchup into their team. It was a really good call for the event. I won that round. And then I go right from that round, which went really, really late, into battling Battle Room, another like well-established, like long-term, multiple regional, winner. I lose that one in a close set. And then I ended up going positive at Worlds. I got, I think, like top 20-ish, 25% in the tournament. But I didn't make Day 2. I did my best. I have no regrets, right? But it was definitely like a good send-off for the team. And who knows, I might have one more run in me. It's just that the older that I get, I find my ability to like lock in and play those really high stakes situations for multiple days in a row, including like the travel and the flying that goes along with that. I know that takes a really big like toll on me mentally. So, we'll see what happens. But I was just so happy that I was able to do that. I told myself I was going to do it. I gave myself strict parameters in not having to use anything that was really good, and I was still able to make it work, and I just had a really good time.
That's wonderful. I hope that everyone watching and listening is taking a lot of inspiration from that as to the goals that you can set yourself. It doesn't necessarily have to be winning the whole thing, whatever that whole thing might be. So, incredible. Now, Philip, it's now time to round out this dream team. What's going to be Pokemon number 6? Yeah,
Pokemon number 6. It's a different typing than all the other ones. It's funny, after making this team, I realized this would actually be a pretty good Zoroark team, because Zoroark can disguises all these because they don't have abilities that get active upon when they get sent out. But it's going to be Garchomp here. It's going to be Garchomp. Garchomp's been with me from the start. Like, Gen 4 was a really big influence on me. Garchomp, I think, is the best Pokemon in Gen 4, and it just slots in perfectly with all of the Pokemon that I mentioned. You pair it next to Butterfree. That's what I used in 2017 when I top cut. Earthquake, flying type avoiding. Pair it with Cresselia. Levitate is its ability. It avoids those ground moves. You can pair it with Earthquake. Zoroark and Garchomp cover for each other very well because you can disguise it. But, Garchomp's just one of those mons to where I've always felt Garchomp is, really strong. And I know this is going to sound like cliche, but there have been so many times at regionals where I'm using a Garchomp and I'm like, I'm gonna lose, but if I crit here I win, and it just gets it right. It's just one of those the magic happens, or I need to flinch with a rock slide. You never want to find yourself in those situations, but the one Pokemon that's been able to bail me out of those so many times as possible has been Garchomp. And then one of my favorite things to do is after you get that win, you play it off like you had it the whole time. Of course I finished, and that's just how it works. I love it. It's Garchomp's my guy. Save the best for last, right? And I think it's a pretty cool mon.
There we go. Dragon and Ground rounding out the team. Incredible. Well, Philip, this means that your complete dream team is Terrakion, Zoroark, Butterfree, Mega Sceptile, Cresselia, and Garchomp. And they're Pokemon that I think the latest generation we have there is 5. Am I right?
Yeah.
With Zoroark there? Yeah. And so it really represents your classic heritage with playing Pokemon. I'm so pleased again that there is a Generation 1 Pokemon on there in Butterfree. But now it's time to ask you, of all these Pokemon, if you had to choose one to be your partner Pokemon, which would it be?
Oh, it's Butterfree. It's always been Butterfree. Always. It's always going to be Butterfree. Butterfree Amigo way back. The first time any new game comes out and I'm able to make a video, it's always a Butterfree video. That's just I get really, really excited about trying to make that Pokemon work using different like sash sets, scarf sets. I've worked with a lot of other creators that make like, content like covering, the history of these Pokemon, and I've helped them with like Butterfree parts of it. I remember I've used Butterfree with Z moves and Butterfree with the Gigantamax, and it's just one of those mons that really makes me excited to play the game with.
That's wonderful. And you spoke about it with such passion before as well. Would you say that you're a particular fan of butterflies, the animal?
Yeah, I am. I definitely am. I enjoy butterflies a lot. So it's one of those things like I feel one of my hobbies is like, I'll put on like, I call them like spooky shows or like things about like cryptids and stuff like that, and butterflies and Mothmans and stuff like that. That's just personally stuff that I'm just interested in. So yeah, I like butterflies.
Very interesting. Well, Butterfree, you are Philip's partner Pokemon. And now, different kind of question for you, Phillip. Based on everything you know about yourself, based on everything we've heard about you up to now, what Pokemon do you think you would be most likely to be?
I have a plush for this too. Oh man. So I have the perfect answer, right? I think it's a really good answer. It plays back to like my, history with Pokemon, going back to like Gen 4, doing a lot of competitive events. And I think it's actually going to be Azelf. I think Azelf perfectly describes everything that I bring to the table as a Pokemon trainer. It is able to set a bunch of different status moves at the start of the game. It's very fast. It has a very high attack and special attack. It can do a little bit of everything, similar to what I said earlier. It's a jack of all trades, master of none. And it's one of the like scariest Pokemon that anyone that is trying to control the game has to play around, because you can't control every single like crazy option at the same time. And the fact that Azelf can do all that stuff and pop off a little bit at the same time just makes it like the perfect example of like, I think, me as a player. So I think Azelf.
I think that's an absolutely fantastic answer. I think there's a lot of merit to that. And Psychic, I think, really does work for you as a type as well. And, when the chips are down, you just click Explosion and we have a bit of fun. Exactly, yeah. So I think that's a really wonderful answer. What do you all think? Do you all agree that of all the Pokemon there are, that's a +1 would be an Azelf? Let us know in the comments. We'd be fascinated to read. Speaking of you all, it's time for your community questions. I posted online, as I always do, asking for questions for my guests. Thank you so much for submitting them. I apologise I won't have time to feature all of them, and if I mispronounce any of your names or handles. But to kick things off, we've got Deathmask Divine, who'd like to know, and so would I, and I think many people watching and listening, what on earth is the origin of your online name, That's a +1?
Yeah, so we didn't briefly touch on it, but before doing like a lot of Pokemon stuff, I was pretty big into like card games as well. I have qualified for, world championships in a couple other card games, being like the Naruto card game, the Weiss Schwartz card game, played a decent amount of other games as well. But That's +1 is like a card term for like kind of control, right? So if you both have 5 cards in your hand and you use 1 card and your opponent has to use 2 cards to beat that, that's a +1 advantage, right? So, you have an advantage, right? So if we were to compare that to Pokemon, if I have a Pokemon and it can potentially KO one of your Pokemon, and then they have to send out something else to like, I would say revenge KO you back, and then you're able to do significant damage to them or even KO them, that is a +1 advantage. Or a situation in which like you send out a Pokemon, right? And maybe you send out like a Weavile versus Salamence. They have to swap away because they don't want to get hit with that big ice attack. So we call that a +1 turn where you can do anything. You can anticipate them swapping and try to punish. You can use a setup move like a Swords Dance. You can make a read on what they swap to and use the right move. But what like I like to see Pokemon as is for fishing for as many and conditioning people to find as many +1 turns as possible. I think it's a really cool way to look at the game, and it's very like tempo heavy, very control heavy. But if you really embrace it, I feel like, it's worked for me, right? So I think it's a good name.
That's really fascinating. I'm so pleased because I've actually wondered that for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And when it came to choosing an online name, was that name immediately there for you?
It was a nickname that was given to me in college. Because like every single time I would go to these tournaments, that's just what people in the community kind of called me, because I always was able to find the right way to find one of those turns to where I'd always know exactly where they were going to swap or where they were going to play a passive turn, and I always like maximally punished it.
Wow, fascinating. Well, thank you very much for clearing that up, and thank you for that question. Now, a question from Lucio989. Are you a red, gold, ruby, etc. kind of guy, or a blue, silver, sapphire kind of guy?
Yeah, so I would say I've thought about this in the past, right? I would say I always initially buy the red version, the ruby version, all those red versions, and I'll do my own playthrough in those. But when I actually have to use a cartridge for a regional, I always end up using like X version, Sapphire version, Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, Moon version. It's always weird. So I'll do like one playthrough where I just play through for fun, get the game beat. But then I have the secondary playthrough just to have like the right name at the tournament and get all my Pokemon just in the right boxes and stuff like that. So I tend to use both, but I always initially go towards the red cartridges.
Interesting. Okay, yeah. And just to clarify that question for anyone, yeah, you often will have, of course, 2 Pokemon games released at one time for a generation in a pair, and it's essentially, do you tend towards the first in the pair or the second in the pair? I myself am more the second in the pair, so very interesting. We complement each other on that front. Now, a question from Morgan Lammett 6571, and again, apologies for any mispronunciations. What's your favourite VGC regulation to play?
Of like all time, you would say? So like every single like year?
I think so. So. I know you marked this one as a good question.
I saw that one. Yeah, I think that I would say I really enjoyed 2011. It was a format that really got me interested in exploring other aspects of the game. I think that that was a format like Terrakion was legal and stuff like that. And so I saw VGC and doubles as being just as deep and even more complex in some situations than single battles were. And so I really do like 2011, but I think my favorite format of all time might be 2013. This is the last format of the Gen 5 games. That's where gems as a mechanic were really big. That was like the gimmick for that generation, were the gems and being able to give like a massive damage boost to just one of your moves. I really liked that. I wish they would bring it back. And I felt that it really leaned into my playstyle where I could play like a balanced team, but have like a really unique gem option or a different damage reduction berry option without there being too much of like a power creep or too many like broken legendaries, to where I could still like play my game the way I want to do it and find like niche strategies to win and make anything possible. I think that's the perfect game for making like any Pokemon possible, would be that format. And it was just a lot of fun to play. Great memories there. That's where I made a lot of my initial friends in the VGC community as well, was that year.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. That answer includes those very fond memories. Fantastic. And now, a final question for you, and a really good one here from Lux001. What's your most memorable moment from making YouTube videos?
Okay. Most memorable moment from making YouTube videos. That is a good one. There's a lot of them. I feel like there's, I said this earlier, the whole reason I started making YouTube videos is because I wanted to be able to record and like document all of like what I thought was really cool outplays so I could look at them when I'm a lot older. But I think the best part about making videos was when the Let's Go games came out. The Let's Go games came out, and I was kind of in a weird situation where I'd already top cut all of the regionals that I personally had wanted to top cut. I know like a lot of people are always chasing that next top cut, that next placing, the next high, right? And if I ever wanted to top cut a regional again, I could just think back on the times that I did it. So when the Let's Go games came out for the Switch, one of the first games on the Switch, I really embraced them, and I really thought that they were pretty deep competitively if you wanted to go and try and make a competitive scene for it. I held a lot of like grassroots, competitions and things like that. It was really big for me on Twitch and YouTube. And right around that time on the Let's Go games, I had been really like trying to make like full-time work, and I just went full-time. I went all in on the Let's Go games, like fully, and they carried me. And I realized a couple months into the Let's Go games, I was like, I can make this work. Like this is gonna work. It's amazing. And I think like that is probably the big thing from YouTube. That's the most memorable thing. It's just how much of like an impact the Let's Go games were. And I think the Let's Go games are, I just want to say one more thing about them. They're so good for helping new players get to the game. There are no abilities in that game. You're not using a lot of the complicated stats or EV training items and spreads and things like that. It's very honest Pokemon. You have to lead correctly. You have to have the right defensive and offensive typing. You have to have the right move pools and coverage and things like that. So for people like looking at it in the game, it teaches the basics of like flow charting. There are so many people that are still like competitive players nowadays that started around that time that were really able to take what was important about the Let's Go games and make that like a core part of their playstyle. It's like the next, generations of players that played like me learned so much from those games. And it was just like, it was perfect. I loved the Let's Go games for that.
Fascinating. Yeah, the Let's Go games, I guess people wouldn't generally see to have much of a competitive angle to them. They were the Nintendo Switch remakes of those Generation 1 games all the way back with Pokemon Red and Blue. And as you say, limited battle functions. But as you say as well, that can be a positive thing just to teach those basics. So really interesting answer. And thank you for all of your questions there. If you'd like to submit a question for a future guest on Chazingdra Chats, then you can find my handles at Chazingdra across X, Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, and of course YouTube. That's where I post the call-outs for questions. I would love to hear what you'd love to hear. All right then, Philip, we've heard a lot about you up to now, but what's next for you?
Yeah, like we were talking about, I don't know if I have any more Worlds invites in me, but we'll see. I think Champions is going to be coming out, and while I embraced the Let's Go games, I embraced the Pokemon Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl games, and I've also embraced heavily the Legends ZA games. I've been doing a lot of competitive tournaments for ZA. I feel like I'm one of the few battle hubs for that game, to where every single weekday on Twitch we host community tournaments, anywhere between 32 and 64 people. Who knows, we might even get like a 100-player community tournament relatively soon. But we've been really trying our best to host these tournaments, analyze the usage stats, and make it like the fun thing for people to do while we wait for champions to come out. And so I think like what I'm going to really focus on is just trying my best to give back to the people that have been able to, let me play Pokemon competitively for all this time. I want to make the sort of content that I think they want to see, but I want to do it in a way that like lets me use the Pokemon that I want to use. So I think that's what's next for me. I think I might go to like 1 or 2 regionals this season, but I just like having fun. I really just like having fun. I like using the mons that I like using, and I want to help other people create the same type of memories that I've built with Pokemon over the years.
Oh, well, what a wonderful note to end things off with there. And again, yeah, it was wonderful that you're able to take the games that people maybe aren't focusing on so much competitively and really look into them and see how far they can go. I myself am really enjoying doing Pokemon Legends EA competitive content as well. I'm very much enjoy watching the things that you bring to the table as well. So thank you. And now, final question for you, Philip. Looking back from now, as a successful Pokemon content creator and competitor, all the way back to the young Philip, who as soon as they played Red, they knew this is the one. What advice would you give to that younger you?
I think the best advice that I could give to my younger self would honestly be to go full-time making like Pokemon content a lot sooner. There was like a weird waffle period where, I knew I wanted to go full-time in 2012. I got Twitch partner in 2014, and then my family didn't really vibe with it or understand how, creating content on the internet could be like an actual career. And so I had to wait a few years and kind of get the receipts to back up what I was doing while also like working full time and stuff like that. And I really think that I could have just went full time like years earlier. And, I think that's probably one of the few advices. I think like looking back, I really value like the amount of time that I spent like just playing a bunch of Pokemon and going to all the grassroots tournaments and playing the games the way I like to play them. I really value those experiences, but I think the one thing would be just going full-time sooner and being myself earlier than I really gave myself the opportunity to be.
Yeah, that's the thing that comes out a lot from the show, just leaning into everything that makes you you. The sooner you do that, then often the quicker the path to happiness. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Philip. And the chat is not in there, because now I'll be getting into That's a Plus One's Rapidash round, 15 or so minutes of bonus questions that Philip has not prepared for. And as with all my guests, there's so much more I want to take a deeper dive into. I want to know Philip's advice for competitors and indeed advice for creators. We're going to be talking a lot more about Pokemon Legends ZA and maybe more about the other games that Philip is into and going beyond Pokemon as well. So if you'd like to join us for a little bit longer, then you can become a YouTube channel member that gets you 4 bonus videos per month and plenty more perks, or you can find the Rapidash rounds individually on my Patreon. But fundamentally, I really appreciate the fact that you've listened to or watched this episode in its entirety. But if you want to hang out with me and Philip for a little bit longer, you can become a YouTube channel member or find the Rapidash round on my Patreon. The links will be below. But for now, Philip, thank you so much for joining me on the show, and thank you so much for your openness and honesty as well. It's been wonderful to take a deeper dive into the person behind the Pokemon, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a blast, and thank you everyone for watching.
No, it's been wonderful, and as I said, only a matter of time before I had you on the show. So if people want to keep up with you online, Philip, where can they find you?
Yeah, so my name is THATSAplusONE on pretty much every social media. We have X, we have YouTube, we have Twitch, we do coaching on Patreon, pretty much every Instagram, same thing. So THATSAplusONE on every single social you'd look for.
Make sure you check that out. And everybody, if you've enjoyed this episode, once more, please do like and subscribe. It would mean a huge amount. And drop a comment too, because Phillip, as with all of my guests, has given us so much food for thought. And plenty more content on my channel too. There are more than 80 episodes of this podcast now with a broad range of people in the community, not just competitive players like Phillip, but more casual players, shiny hunters, people who have some connection to Pokemon in some way. There's bound to be an episode for everyone. So to spread the word about the show, you can use the hashtag 6Pokemon, 1 life story. We've had other competitive guests on, like WOLFE GLICK that Phillip mentioned there, as well as MANDJTV and Austin John Plays and The Work, so make sure you check that out. But also plenty more content on my channel too. I stream currently a lot of Pokemon Legends EA. I believe I'm the first in the world to cast Pokemon Legends EA as well, which I'm very much enjoying doing, commentating that, so you can check out the content I do about that, Pokemon flavoured comedy skits, and far more casual things, including some shiny hunting too, so do check it out. And my video on commentating the Europe International Championships in 2025, which was the biggest Pokemon tournament at the time, giving the event from the caster's perspective and breaking down competitive Pokemon for all to enjoy, how I utilise my drama school training to commentate events as well. So I very much hope that you enjoy that. I'm at Chazingdra across all socials. Episodes of this podcast drop every Wednesday, and my Discord community is linked below, and my email is linked below as well. But for now, Phillip, it's time to get into your Rapidash rounds. Right. If you're not joining us as a YouTube channel member or over on Patreon for that, then it's goodbye from Phillip, and it's goodbye from me. See you next time on Chazingdra Chats, where there'll be another 6 Pokemon, 1 life story. And Phillip, how are you feeling about these bonus questions?
I'm feeling pretty good. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah? All right, well then let's dive right in. What advice would you give to, first of all, we'll start with aspiring creators.
Yeah, I really do think that the biggest advice that anyone could give, like,